Guys, I'd like to show you an alternative way to get rid of random or sporadic clumping weeds that you have in your lawn. This is not going to work for those weeds that like sprawl out with underground runners or above ground runners, but for clumping weeds, like for instance, rough or rough fescue, Kentucky 31, or clumping tall fescue, if you got this in your lawn, yeah, you could try to pull it out, but it is kind of hard to pull out big clumps of deeply rooted unwanted grass. Now, there's a variety of other weeds that fall into this category as well. I'm not going to list them all out. I just want to show you an alternative way of doing it. This alternative way does not use chemicals. You don't need to buy any products. You don't need to spray anything on the lawn or put anything on the lawn, and it is very effective. But I wouldn't do this for a ton of stuff. I would just do it for sporadic stuff. I got other videos on this channel, which I will link to down below. Methods of killing off a whole bunch of unwanted things with standard store-bought chemicals. You can find links to that below. I've also got links down there to other natural ways of dealing with other kinds of weeds. Well, let's get to the fun stuff today. It's actually not in this lawn right here. It's in this lawn right here, way back over by the where the sidewalk meets the driveway. Let me flip the camera around. All right, zooming out here, you see a pretty pristine, this is not perfect, but it's close to it. This is a pretty pristine patch of Kentucky bluegrass. I have essentially no bare spots. It might be kind of thin over here. Everything is nice and thick. The problem, which is barely a problem, is right here. Look, as you look down on it, you can clear as day, plain as day, see that all of this grass, which is everywhere, does not match this clump. This blade, as you can plainly see, has a ton of vertical parallel veins running down it. This is a clumping fescue. And as you can see, it clumps, and you can pull it all the way to the middle. But it's actually kind of big. It's got a big middle. So I could attempt to pull this out of the ground, but I might not get all of the crown and the root system in there. So if I attempt to pull it up, it might come back. Also, if I had random clumps all over the place, it would take a lot of pulling, and then maybe a few weeks later, some of those would start growing back, and I'd have to do it again. And it's harder to pull when you shrink the plant down. So if you've ever pulled a weed before and didn't quite get it all up, the main root system is still underground, but only a tiny bit of foliage is on the top. So it's harder to get it and pull it out. You really got to dig down. You got to use special tools. Now, some people have these tools, but not everybody does. Most people have a shovel. You could use a shovel, but this is what I'm going to do. Boom. I'm going to use this tool. This tool I've owned for 4 to 5 years or so. I've used it for so many different things. This area over here used to have like a big patch, a bare spot over there. I grabbed dirt from this area. I put it over there. I did it like, 16 different holes, and I put it over there, filled the whole spot in. And now, as you can see, it looks pretty much perfect. This is a plugging tool. They call it a planting tool, but in the lawn care area, we call it a plugger. So you can plunge this into the ground and pull a plug out of the ground. And then if you pull a plug out the air, then you can swap the plugs. You put this one over there and that one over here. You can do so many different things like this. If you wanted to, they call it a planting tool. You could pull a plug out of the ground and then plant plants in it, like in a garden. You could spread your own grass by grabbing good clumps of grass and putting it somewhere else where you don't have grass growing. And then that grass, assuming it's a spreadable grass type, will move in lateral directions. You could spread exact versions of the grass somewhere else. In this case, I'm just going to pull up a plug of what I don't want and kill it when it's out of the ground. And then I'm going to put the plug right back. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to cut that little section as super duper low as I possibly can. Unnecessary, but I feel that it's going to look tidier. Because obviously I have a tidy lawn, so I want my lawn to look tidy, even while I'm doing something weird like this. Now I'm going to take these inside to my kitchen. Weird as that may be, the kitchen is where we do this. we come to the stove, which has been preheated to 200 degrees. Inside the stove, hey, there's me. Hi. Inside the stove is a sheet pan. Yeah, 200 degrees. I'll let the temperature drop a bit. All right, I'm going to set that in there for 2 hours. Doesn't that seem crazy? All right, so what's important to note here is that grass grows in dirt. And if the dirt gets too warm or too hot, it dies. That's why some cool season grass types cannot be grown in warm season territories where it's constantly getting to 100 degrees for a few months throughout the course of the summer. Even warm season grasses will die if the temperature gets high. This just makes perfect sense. If you put a carrot in the oven and roast it, then, how on earth would that carrot ever go back in the ground and continue growing? It's not possible. Same thing goes with grass. That's a dumb analogy. I'm sorry. It makes sense, but it's dumb. If we can put that dirt with the root systems and the grass in the oven and heat it up to 200 degrees and give it enough time, it will die. A couple hours at 200 degrees will fully kill it. Now, if you bring that temperature up to like 500 degrees, then it will kill it much faster. However, you're going to run the risk of chemically releasing things from the soil that make the soil not good for grass growth later on. And that comes into the next step of this. So if you have perennial rye or a turf-type tall fescue, those things are not going to spread back into those zones. So you probably might need to put just a pinch of grass seed onto the plugs once we put them back in the ground. If the soil is like toxic because you heated it too much, then it's not going to grow very well. Also, for spreadable grass types like Kentucky bluegrass, what I have, or all of the warm season grass types, handful of them are Bermuda, zoysia, buffalo, St. Augustine, etc., bahia. Those spreadable grass types aren't going to want to be growing into toxic soil. So they will eventually, but it's going to take a little bit longer for those spreadable grass types to incorporate into that zone. That's why I say a couple 100 degrees. Now, I only did like 2 plugs side by side. If you have a whole bunch of clumping grass, just pull clumps right from the middle all over. Sheet pan will get the job done. If you've got a ton of this stuff, then perhaps you might need to use a different method. But this method is really awesome. And although it takes a handful of hours, it takes only like 5 working minutes. So after my oven finishes, after my timer goes off, I'm going to stick them in the ground. I'll show you what it looks like. And then since I cut that little corner of the grass super duper low, all I do is just continue maintaining the lawn at the normal grass height. Eventually that grass grows right back up and everything matches. My Kentucky bluegrass will spread right back into the spot. All right, here we are a couple hours later. I'm going to turn this off. Boom. Let this cool down a little bit. Everything on the inside of my plugs are 200 degrees at this point. Everything in there should be dead. I don't even know where my camera. There's my camera. Everything should be dead. So I'm going to let this cool down. I'm not going to shove it into the ground at 200 degrees. I'll let it cool down. Then I'll put it in the ground. But in the meantime, I'm just going to grab a little bit of water because this is bone dry now. And the holes are kind of dry. So I'm going to grab some water. I'm going to pour it into each one of my 2 holes. But if I did this on like 20 different plugs, then I'd put a little bit of water into all 20 holes before I put the plugs back. I'm going to leave a bit of water here to put on top of the plugs once they're in the holes. And now, with a little bit of time passed, I'm going to go ahead and put these cooled down. See, there's still some water way down in there. This is bone dry. I'm going to put these cooled down plugs right back into the hole. All of this up here is dead. I don't have to cut it off or anything like that. It just dies. All of the good Kentucky bluegrass will spread back in here. If you have a warm season grass, I'll do the same thing. Grab this. Stick that back in there. A little bit of extra water down deep. squirts out. Pour a little bit on top. Got to rehydrate that plug. So all the bugs and worms and things and the roots and rhizomes want to grow back into it. Loose stuff on top I'm going to take off. Now it's super low because of the mower that I did earlier. I could cut everything down and match it in height, but I'm not going to because I want to keep my grass at this height. So I'm just going to let this area grow back up and then match the rest of it. But as you can see, as you pan back, it doesn't look crazy. It does look a little bit weird because of my mower stripe. So if you don't want to do that mower stripe, then just keep it long. Probably not that big of a deal either way. I just chose one versus the other. All right, now if you don't want to use that tool over there, the Pro Plugger tool, you don't want to buy anything, all you got to do is use a shovel. Use the shovel, go around in a circle, pull the stuff up, stick it on your sheet pan. It works exactly the same. The Pro Plugger tool over there is just makes it way easier, and it's versatile. You can use it for a lot of other things in the lawn. I have a video down below where I explain and review all of the various things that I use it for in the lawn. There's probably other things that I use it for that I don't even include in this video or that one. If you do have a whole bunch of weeds and you're fine using the chemical route, I have other videos in the description explaining how to use those chemicals to get rid of weeds, including natural options. Natural options are limited in what they can do. Bear that in mind. Keep that in mind. But I do want to say that if you have a spreadable grass type, especially a warm season grass type like Bermuda grass, then make sure to watch this video up here. Bermuda grass, you cannot do this method. In this exact yard, I've had Bermuda grass. And the only way I got rid of the Bermuda grass, invading this Kentucky bluegrass or any other cool season grass type, is to do exactly what I did in this video up here.